All right. Well, some big news of the day heading into the final full week of no NFL regular season football for quite some time. So excited to get to it here this week. We'll have a jam-packed week for you with two previews as we finish up our divisional previews this week and then obviously culminate our preseason commentary next week with our final official NFL prediction episode. That's always a fun one. But Mark, we can get to some big news that just dropped a little bit ago before we even started the show. That is, of course, Amari Cooper back with the Las Vegas Raiders.
Is he really?
He is actually.
Okay.
I did say that tongue in cheek because he's 30.
I didn't even see that one.
But yeah, no, that one dropped, and it is certainly being in the shadow of the news that both Trey Hendrickson and Terry McLaurin, their hold-ins or holdouts, whatever you want to say, are over. So Trey Hendrickson just getting the one-year deal, $30 million from the Bengals. So he's still set to be an unrestricted free agent next year. Terry McLaurin gets a 3-year deal, $96 million. And he gets a nice $13 million signing, or $30 million signing bonus with that as well. So a couple big deals there. But Trey Hendrickson basically almost playing on like a franchise tag style thing, which I've seen a couple out there already joking around that watch the Bengals just turn around and franchise tag him next year and we start this whole conversation over again. But those hold-ins very much being talked about for several weeks now. That is over.
Let's start with Trey Hendrickson. I really love it for both sides, right? Hendrickson gets a giant chunk of money guaranteed. You're basically getting $30 million for 1 year. For a guy who's already made millions of dollars, I mean, that's a huge amount of money. You can go out there and ball out for another year, try to lead the league in sacks again. And you get to hopefully compete, right? And you get to hopefully be on a team that is competing for something. And if you're the Bengals, it's an absolute necessity, right? We've seen how poorly their defense has looked in the preseason. I know it's just the preseason, but with how bad it was last year, it certainly is concerning. And you say to your fans, and you say to yourself as an organization, right? On all, accounts, it appears as though the Bengals are trying to win, right? Like if I'm a Bengals fan, you signed your 2 wide receivers, you have your quarterback, and you signed your star on defense. What more do you really want them to do? They drafted well. Like, what more could they really have done? They're all in on this year. Now, what does it look like in 2-3 years from now? I don't know. You hope you have Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, and the rest of it you keep building and drafting and you figure it out. But right now, this Bengals team is kind of all in on this year. That puts pressure on the coach. That puts pressure on the players to go out there and get it done. But it looks like as far as an ownership group that we make fun of a lot, they push the cards into the table like they're trying to win.
Eventually got it done, but yeah, I think the gripes of how we got here are still fairly valid, and it makes sense why people are saying it's the same old type thing. But yes, to your point, they got the end result that people wanted, and at the end of the day, that's kind of all that matters, right?
Yeah, and if as far as Terry McLaurin goes with Washington, it's the same thing, right? Listen, I know you're paying a little bit with Terry for the next year and a half. You're hoping you're paying for still Terry McLaurin, right? Maybe the third year or the last year and a half of this contract, we're paying for someone who was a stand-up model citizen at a time when this organization desperately needed that and was flailing. I mean, Terry McLaurin has been a Redskin, a football team, a commander. I mean, he has been through it all. And listen, if I'm Terry, I had every right to be frustrated that I'm making just as much money as Deebo Samuel, a guy you bring in who's not as good as me. And now we're in this kind of win now mode. And it's not an insane deal. It's a very fair deal, right on par with a lot of other wide receivers and the money they're making, but it's not Jamar Chase money. So I think it makes a ton of sense for both teams. And listen, you're still not paying Jane Daniels for the next 2 years. In 2 years from now, yeah, you're going to have to negotiate that big deal with Jay Daniels. And then that money from Terry is pretty much gone and off the books. And you're probably looking to find him his next number one guy at that point in time anyway. So I think it's a great transitional deal while you still have a quarterback on a rookie contract and a team that, again, is oddly in this win now mode because you have a rookie quarterback deal going on and you're not paying him anything. It's a big year for Washington, and you needed to get Terry. Hey, you got a week and a half now. Let's ramp this thing up. That ankle feels a lot better today, doesn't it? And let's get to practice, right?
Yeah, I mean, and this is a move that's not going to break the bank either. It's not like they're mortgaging anything to get this deal done. So it made all the sense in the world to just get Terry McLaurin back out on the field with Jaden Daniels, which is also very important for Jaden Daniels' continued development. When you have a unreliable in terms of availability wide receiver in Deebo Samuel, and then a still young and fairly unproven Luke McCaffrey, you need a guy like Terry McLaurin there to help steady those waters and keep you in that competitive spirit for the next couple of years. So great deal. Glad to see them get those done. A couple other news and notes. Since we didn't have an episode last week, Daniel Jones was named the starter for the Indianapolis Colts. I know you talked about this a little bit, Mark, in your preview. You were hoping, or at least, saying what you would have done would have been to start the season with Anthony Richardson, because it makes more sense to then go to Daniel Jones if things are falling off than it is to then reverse course and go back with Anthony Richardson. So now that you've had a little bit to digest this move, has anything changed for you, or do you still think that this is probably not the right decision to begin the year?
Well, to me, what's changed is I'm not going to be shocked now if in the next 24 hours we see Anthony Richardson get released or traded. And that's it's very, now it feels very reminiscent.
You think that this is a total ship has sailed type of situation?
I think that how can you put him out there with any confidence, right? They're saying the right things, going, no, Anthony could, we still have plans for Anthony and blah, blah, blah. But how can you put him out there with any confidence? How can your organization look itself in the mirror with any confidence?
I understand that, but can I counter real quick? Because I feel like we just saw this a year ago with Bryce Young. He's benched, and Andy Dalton's the quarterback, and you're thinking, okay, well, like this is it for this kid. Like, where's the turnaround going to come? He's been yanked multiple times, and now he's like official. The head coach is saying, no, we're not. We're not riding with him anymore. Then he comes back in and plays well. I'm not saying it's apples to apples. He was a number 1 overall pick. Anthony Richardson has not even been able to stay healthy for a couple seasons. So there's definitely a lot of differences there, but more so playing devil's advocate. I am curious, like if Shane Steichen and company just are like this.
It's not happening.
It's not happening here. If it happens elsewhere, great. But this is Trey Lance 2.0, and we're happy to move on, just like the 49ers were after spending all of that draft capital. They cut their losses and said, we got to move on. And maybe they are, doing that same thing here in Indy.
There's teams that I think could really use Anthony Richardson as a piece. I think those teams are like Buffalo. I would have said 2 days ago that team would have been Philadelphia. Being a backup to those two guys who are established starters who you don't have to worry about, but he fits in their kind of idea of what those prototype quarterbacks are. You're going to be physical. You're going to be big. You're going to use your size. And obviously, Josh Allen's a prolific passer, and Jalen Hurts is a very, very good passing quarterback.
Also, just a good guy to have available to practice against when you've got to come up against some of the more athletic quarterbacks, right? Like I could think Cincinnati could benefit from having a quarterback like that on their roster,
Yeah, I also think, now obviously Philly makes the trade. I don't know if he's in play there. I'm just saying, like, okay, I'm not predicting he's going to, but I think you asked me, like, what changed? Like that's the only thing that
enters the equation now is a possibility.
That to me is the only thing that changed. Is it feels like maybe now that there's that nugget of if he does get traded or released here in the next 24, 48 hours, his roster cuts are going into effect. I wouldn't be shocked. I would have been shocked probably 2-3 weeks ago. You're saying, hey, you're gonna trade or cut him. I'm like, to give it a chance, start the season with him, and then go to Daniel Jones if it doesn't work out. So we'll see. And maybe it isn't the end. Maybe you're right. Maybe there is a Bryce Young kind of light at the end of the tunnel for this thing. I think if you're Shane Steichen, I still just go back to when we talked about them in the previews, that like he wants and needs to win, right? Like Stefanski feels like he can have a year where, again, they're picking in the top 5 and he's still their head coach. For Indy, I don't know if that's the feeling around Shane Steichen. You have new ownership now. The daughters have taken over. They may look at this as like, hey, Chris Ballard, my dad loved Chris Ballard, but we have no ties to Chris Ballard. We have no ties to this. Maybe the best thing to do is to start fresh. And listen, those girls grew up in an organization where you had Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck, right? I agree, Andy. I think AR's part of it is it's a mental game. We've seen it in the way he plays. But I guess the point I'm trying to make with the daughters is, would it shock you if they look at this and they go, hey, we want to wipe, clean slate and start our own imprint on this franchise? Maybe not. I don't know. But there's a lot of question marks around the Colts. And I feel bad for Colts fans because 6 years ago yesterday, I think it was, or 2 days ago, Andrew Luck retired. And listen, I gave him a couple years, but now it's like a disaster, right?
Sure.
This is a disaster.
And they've had my draft picks. Like, they've had their opportunities.
This is a disaster. And I think a lot of that just falls on Chris Ballard. He gets no more excuses. And if the Daniel Jones stopgap doesn't work, then I wouldn't be shocked if they clean slate. And again, if it works well and you win 8-9 games, well, then you're not picking high enough to get a great quarterback anyway. So it's a disaster in that regard as well, right? Like, yeah. And so I feel for Colts fans.
Damned if you do, damned if you don't. Right. Final bit of news in division: Joe Mixon now will begin the season on the non-football injury list, but he does have an ankle injury, so he's going to miss at least the first 4 games of the NFL season. They did bring in Nick Chubb. Hopefully, this can be some sort of awesome redemption story, maybe a comeback player of the year situation for Nick Chubb, depending on if this injury lingers for Mixon into taking him out for the entire first half of the season. I think that's in play, given all that I've heard. It's really been negative surrounding this injury all offseason. And so now that, it's a good thing that they got a proven back and Nick Chubb there. They still have Dameon Pierce and Daria Gumbawale. So they have some, veteran-esque NFL players in that backfield. But obviously with the season Joe Mixon had last year,
and the last 2 years,
this is a big blow. Yeah, this is just not what you want to see for sure for Texas.
Yeah, listen, I'm with you 100%. I think, I think Chubb for the first 4 games, him being fully healthy, I think he can hold the water. And then you say to yourself, listen, Mixon, a mix of Mixon and Chubb, 2 really great veteran running backs who at their peak can still be 1,000-yard backs in this league for another year or 2. Like, all right, just give them both like the carries, right? And like they can spell each other. And you hope by Thanksgiving it's a real blessing, right? That both of them have fresh legs and both of them are running well. And we got to remember, it's a new offensive coordinator in Houston. What's his name? Who was the whiz kid who 2 years ago was going to be
Slowick?
Slowick was going to be the next Shane Steichen.
Yeah.
He was out after a disappointing year last year. And so there's a lot of question marks around Houston. This adds another big one. Can Chubb carry the load for 4 games? I think he can. I think he'll be a very quality back for the first 4 games.
I agree.
And Houston, as we talked about, it's workable schedule. So I'm not panicky if I'm Houston, but certainly when you don't have Tank Dell, when you have new receivers coming in with Christian Kirk and Nico Collins dealing with all, coming back for some injuries as well. So a lot to the first week or 2 of Houston and how that offense looks is going to be interesting.
Yeah. Are they going to be able to come out of the gates firing? It doesn't appear that way.
If let's be honest, if CJ Stroud starts slow, say after week 3, he's got 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, you know what I mean? And he's kind of not putting up numbers. We'll have now a larger sample size of underwhelming CJ Stroud versus overwhelming CJ Stroud. It's 50-50 right now, average versus above average. And so there's pressure, I would say.
Yeah,
There's
yeah. No, I think
intrigue.
it's an important year. You
Get
gotta
the
sustain that while you can. Otherwise, you can quickly fade in this league.
Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, a good little preamble there to this episode where we will be previewing the NFC and AFC West divisions, giving our thoughts on all of these teams, how they stack up ahead of the 2025 NFL season. Let's get into it. That's right. Bringing the intro back.
I love it. It's also the great people to have on that intro because I would say if you're picking one from each division, the two most intriguing players as far as what their years are going to look like and the importance of those two guys to these divisions and how it's going to shake out. So love it.
For those listening, Patrick Mahomes and Matt Stafford are the thumbnail of choice for this episode. Mark, I'd like to start in the NFC.
Okay, yeah.
And I do want to start with the Los Angeles Rams, if I may.
The Rams.
Really interesting team. This is a team much like the Bills that I'm not going to let my past judgments influence and stick to my guns. I'm going to have to reverse course here, just like I did with Buffalo ahead of last season, because I had said Buffalo was washed, and while they still haven't gotten over the hump to the Super Bowl, they were able to reach their ceiling yet again, and so I had to wear that one. I'm also going to do the same with the Rams here. I really thought that Matthew Stafford was at the end of his rope, and right now we're still dealing with some injury concerns, no question about it. But he and the team and that young defense that wasn't built with anybody was able to outperform expectations by a long shot. I'm beginning to realize more and more how important Sean McVay is to this equation when evaluating the team. And while Matt Stafford has been a huge part of their success, McVay is still the guy there in LA. And so, look, I can't really, forecast a brutal season like I had in the past with this team. We don't know what's going on with Matt Stafford, but I also feel like with how well that defense played, they now have a good infrastructure there on defense. They really didn't have any notable losses in my view, Mark. Yes, Cooper Kupp is gone, but he is well past his prime. And they bring in Devontae Adams, who is still performing at a very high clip last year, even after he got traded to the Jets. So I think there's an upgrade there. And now you have him with Puka Nacua. You have young tight ends. Kyron Williams is still a young, very important back to this equation. And they just won their division after a year in which, they did have to deal with a fair amount of adversity. So I think this all sets up kind of for Sean McVay to work his magic, even if Matthew Stafford has to miss some time. They have Jimmy Garoppolo. Stetson Bennett has actually, had a pretty decent preseason, and he seems like he could be a really long-lasting NFL backup in this league. So I think the spirits are relatively high there in LA outside of the Matthew Stafford discussion. Now, if he does end up missing the vast majority of the season, we're going to have to calibrate our expectations and have that discussion. But I don't really see things bottoming out. And I think the biggest reason for their success, perhaps, is how easy this schedule is. I mean, I was looking at Mark. I haven't looked at Warren Sharp's breakdown because he has really good breakdowns on like the ease of schedule. I don't know where the Rams rank, but just based on looking at it, they've got to be in like the top 5 or 6 easiest schedules in the NFL, I would venture to say, ahead of this season. So I'm optimistic with this team, and they're really not staring down any big guns in the division. There's a lot of questions about San Francisco, which we'll get to later. And Arizona hasn't done anything to make you scared of them, and Seattle's got a lot of turnover. So this is their division to lose, essentially. So those are my thoughts on the I almost said St. Louis Rams, the Los Angeles Rams. What say you?
Well, they were 10-7 last year, and I don't think there is a team that is more capable of going either 4-13 or 14-3 than the Rams, and it's all based on Stafford's back. I mean, this back injury is obviously been a major concern. 2 years ago, when I predicted the Rams were going to have a great year and then they fell off, it was dealing with the elbow injury all offseason, and the elbow lingered, and they had a bad year, a below average year, and they ended up getting Jared Verse and adding to that young defense. And then Stafford was fully healthy last offseason, and they had a great year, 10-7 in a brutal schedule, and they end up
and almost beat the eventual Super Bowl champs.
Of everyone who played the Eagles, they played them the toughest in the playoffs, and truly on the road in the snow. When you think the Rams should dolphin like the Dolphins do, they didn't. They really had a toughness since it's been the Stafford Rams versus the Jared Goff Rams of those early McVay Rams days. So the back injury is crucial. It's really crucial. Now, Stafford last year in 16 games, only 20 touchdowns, 3,700 yards. They were going through a lot of injuries with the wide receiver. Puka missed time. Cooper missed time. I think you're going to see, if he's healthy, those numbers bounce closer to that 27, 28 touchdowns, 4,000 yards with Nakua and Adams. Higbee's a very nice weapon. Tutu Atwell, wide receiver. I also expect, obviously, Kyron Williams, but Blake Corum, a second year out of Michigan, get a little bit more run with this improving offensive line with Havenstein, Shelton, Avila. Very nice offensive line. It's recovered well since it was bad a couple of years ago after they had lost. What's his name after the Super Bowl win? But Dan, I do want to mention Stafford is 23 touchdowns away from 400. I think he's aware of that. Matt Stafford is the definition of borderline Hall of Fame, Hall of Very Good.
Where would that put him? That has to be like
400. It's a rare. It's rare. Oh yeah. It's rare air. Top when you hit 400 and more, you're talking about Brady, Manning, Rodgers, Favre, Marino. It's rarefied air, and so I think that
would. He's already number 10. All the time. So that would put him in Big Ben and Marino territory.
And so with the Super Bowl, with the 400, if this injury lingers, could this maybe be his ride off into the sunset year? You know what I mean? If they win the division, have a nice deep playoff run again, and he plays well, but the injuries catch up to him, I think this is a really nice fitting end, maybe could be to a Hall of Fame career, or maybe, who knows, the treatment's working and he's healthy. And I have a feeling the Rams are going to draft a quarterback next year anyways. Like, they're going to go invest. Maybe Stafford. I think they're going to first round. Yeah. Then maybe Stafford has a bridge year, or maybe he wants to go elsewhere. But I think there's a really important year for him in McVay and kind of a final run. That defense is really growing. As we mentioned, it was very good last year. I think it has a chance to be tremendous this year. Obviously, Jared Verse, Poona Ford, Quentin Lake, they have guys who exploding onto the scene. The schedule is workable. Yes, they do have to play Tampa, Detroit, and Houston, but all of those games are in Los Angeles. They have an interesting stretch weeks 3 through 7. Philly at Philly, Indy, and then home against the Niners at Baltimore. So a lot of kind of at Philly, back home, at then Baltimore, and then they get all the way back home against the Jags. So some tough games in there with Philly, the Niners, Baltimore, and the Jags. You should have a win with Indy at home. But that's one of those stretches where we're going to learn a lot about what this Rams team is capable, I think, weeks 3 through 7. Hey, if they do go to Philly and win, come back home and win against Indy, and then they win against the Niners, they can afford to maybe slip at Baltimore, maybe a strategic rest game somewhere, and to come back home and play a Jags team and beat a Jags team. If they can find a way to go 4-1 in that stretch, then this team could be for real. So I like the Rams a lot. I have since they got Stafford. I don't see them as a 12-13 win team because I do think with the age on offense, there's going to be nicks and bumps and bruises. I'd be shocked if Stafford plays 17 games. I'd pencil him in for more like 15 at this point in time, maybe even a strategic sit with the bye week to nurse the back. The back is better. I know it's terrible to say, but Stafford's dealt with back injuries before. The elbow was something new and really, I think, really threw him off on his throwing elbow. I think the back is something he can work through and he can manage if they strategically give him, some breaks and things like that. I'm not sure exactly where their bye week is. I like the Rams a lot, and I think this division is going to be spicy. I'm a little higher on the division than maybe you were from what your original kind of take was. So I'm interested to see. I'm going to San Francisco next, and so I'm going to get them out of the way here and kind of see what you have to say. I'll kick it off here. For me, the Niners.
Real quick though, not to derail anything, but I just thought this was interesting. We were talking about Stafford, his legacy, the touchdowns. Where do you think Kirk Cousins ranks all time in touchdowns?
Okay, so he's got to be up there. He's got to be top 20. My guess is he's creeping into like 16, 17 range, maybe top 15.
Correct. He's 288. He's just 2 behind Johnny Unitas.
Yeah.
And only 3 behind Warren Moon. That's kind of
wild. And again, and that's the perfect encapsulation to show why the Hall of Fame shouldn't include Phillip Rivers and should not include,
Matt Ryan.
Matt Ryan.
Yeah.
Because Stafford's different. He's got the numbers and a Super Bowl victory in which he was the reason they won the Super Bowl. Like we saw it with our eyes. Don't let history rewrite itself. He was Hall of Fame numbers like a Rivers, but he did get over the hump.
And if you were to ask, who had more passing touchdowns in their NFL career, Kirk Cousins or Joe Montana, how many people do you think would correctly say Kirk Cousins?
Yeah, I think not many, but again, it just goes to show how different the league is, right? And so that's why you need the Hall of Fame to have a real standard in those debates that we've had before. I love that. It's good. It's a good point there. And so, yeah, there's chasing history for 400 for Stafford this year. Okay, 49ers, 6-11 last year. Remember, they lost 6 games in a row at the end of the year. Things fell off the wagon.
It was really
bad. And what did they do this offseason? They don't get healthier. They trade Debo. They give Purdy a shit ton of money. And they did just trade for Sky Moore. So that just goes to show you what the shambles. It doesn't look like Ayuk may be healthy to start the year. Ricky Pearsall and Sky Moore.
Ayuk could conceivably be out almost the entire season. Like that's what's being talked about right now, which is
I know it's the same. It's very reminiscent of last year with Christian McCaffrey. Which remember, Christian people were drafting him 1-1, and then it was an hour and a half before kickoff, and it's like, oh wait, all of a sudden Christian McCaffrey's going to miss 6 weeks, and it's like, what the fuck? And so the Niners have a history of that. So listen, there's a lot of concerns as far as the water's being muddy for San Francisco. Now, it's not as noisy as an offseason. Remember, last year I dinged them a lot, and I had them missing the playoffs last year. Felt very good about that, and one of my things was the noise. Not as much noise. They moved on from Debo quickly, and you haven't heard it all circling. They did just trade for Robinson, the running back, as well. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, right? Because it's good because he's a good player and he has depth. But is it bad because is that saying something about what Christian McCaffrey's at?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? If they thought Christian McCaffrey was Christian McCaffrey 2 years ago, they wouldn't trade for a running back. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the only thing I think is like they traded away Jordan Mason, coming into the year, and so they were already thin, and they had Isaac Guerrero.
Yeah, but that's what
saw from him.
So my counter to that would be, but that's what Shanahan does. He just takes a guy at the street, and in his system, it can be anyone. So the fact that they're trading for someone, I think, might be, again, a little nugget.
It gives you pause.
It's, again, throw it into just the confusion for me trying to predict what the Niners will be. Yeah. In 15 games last year, Purdy, 20 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 3,800 yards. He did rush for 5 touchdowns, 300 yards rushing. He is sneaky as far as picking up first downs on 3rd and 5.
Rodgers or Alex Smith.
Yes. Yeah, very much so. Very much so. Listen, as far as weapons go, Robinson is suspended. Juwan Jennings is injured, and Juwan Jennings became the number one guy for them at the end of the year. You do have Pearsall, as I mentioned, trade for Sky Moore. You have the 2 running backs, McCaffrey, who's, if he's healthy, he's still a top 5 back in this league and a top 5 weapon in this league. Luke Farrell and Juszczyk are very nice pieces as well. Obviously, Kittle is, to me, probably tight end number 1 in the NFL right now. Him and Brock Bowers.
He will be their top target.
And Laporta. So there's plenty of guys, right? If everyone's healthy. Then I go to the offensive line, and Trent Williams, can he play 17 games? Again, I just don't think so. I think it's going to be a little bit like Stafford's year. If I get 15 games out of Trent Williams, that's a great year.
Yeah.
But again, the rest of that offensive line, McKivitz and people, like, I'm just not sold 100% on this is the offensive line that Shanahan is pumped about to run his system. Now, they may prove me wrong, right? Like the Rams defense did last year. The young guys showed up. People can play well in a system, so I have question marks. I don't feel confident about it. On defense, still a lot of guys but a lot of guys you don't know anymore. Ufunga is not there anymore. Yes, you still have Michael Williams, Fred Warner, Bosa. I think the biggest get for the Niners in the offseason, Robert Saleh. No one's talking about that, but Robert Saleh coming back to them as a capable head coach who's now getting back in charge of the reins of that defense. I think he's going to be motivated as all hell. And if him and Bosa are healthy, if Bosa's healthy, Fred Warner's healthy, Robert Saleh fired up, I think that's great sign for the 49ers defense to maybe regain some of its teeth. They had a brain dump for sure. And as talent aged, it made that defense more susceptible. I think the defense takes a big step back in the right direction. Listen, the schedule, they're tough games. Rams twice, at Tampa, at Houston. So the Rams get those games at home. The Niners have to go at Tampa, at Houston. That's not that bad. If those are the 4 tough games on the schedule. I was going to
say, I think they also are right up there with.
Yeah, and Dan, listen to week 11 through 18. So if they are, even if they're injured at the end of the year, if they're battling for a playoff spot, there's no excuse to lose 6 games in a row when you have at Arizona, home against the Panthers, at Cleveland, bye week late, try to get healthy for a last-minute push, home against Tennessee, at Indy, home against Chicago, home against Seattle. No excuse for Brock Purdy and the 49ers to miss the playoffs. No excuse for them to miss the playoffs. With the defense and Saleh back, listen, you have Kittle, you have enough weapons, no excuse for this Niners team to not make the playoffs. 6-11 last year. They have got to be a double-digit win team with the way that season schedule ends and with their tough games being your in-division rival and at Tampa, at Houston. No excuses for the Niners this year. It wouldn't shock me if they're a 12-win team and a huge bounce back. I don't know if they're a great team, but I think their schedule is really easy, and they're a very good and well-coached team.
Yeah, I love the exclamation point you put there because that was what I had in my notes was they ought to make the playoffs. Like they really should. And I know that's kind of crazy to hear given that's what we've come to expect from Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers. But last year was rough. They're still an old team, all things said. And I mean, to your point, I was almost more concerned about what they lost defensively than anything else because Hargrave was gone, Leonard Floyd, multiple additional losses on the D-line, Dre Greenlaw. Like they lost a lot of dudes. Now, yes, they'll have Fred Warner back, who was dealing with lingering stuff all last year. It seemed it didn't have a great season overall. But what you said about bringing in Robert Saleh, that is the X factor there in terms of where they improved defensively. So hopefully he can be a guy to kind of come in there and even out what they lost in terms of dudes. And they did spend that draft capital, the first 2 picks, on the defensive line. So they're getting younger. They're trying to usher in the new wave and try and mitigate some of the complete veteran injury-plagued seasons that they've had recently. But it was still a big loss, and I was wondering coming into this year, the San Francisco's defense has been a top 5-ish unit for several years now. Are we going to see them almost kind of crumble before they can fully get back? I don't know. I think with Robert Saleh, they probably don't bottom out like that. But as you said, it's probably a step back in terms of production for this defense. So they're going to need the offense to stay healthy, primarily the run game. I mean, yes, Kyle Shanahan can get a lot out of dudes just because of his scheme, but we've seen it. I mean, with CMC not on the field, with not Deebo Samuel not on the field, Brock Purdy is not the guy. At least he hasn't been to this point to completely put a team on his shoulders and say, we're going to elevate and we're going to, get beyond this. So they're going to need the run game to be a healthy run game all year long. And they're going to need Juwan Jennings or Pearsall to like really take that next step to be like the dude, because you're not going to be able to just rely on Kittle being your top target, especially when you have to, rely on his blocking so much as they do as well.
Final point for me going off of that is I'll say this. I'm very critical of Brock Purdy. And my criticism of Brock Purdy just goes to the fact that I would, if I was a general manager, would never pay a guy who doesn't have one or two A+ all-world traits. Brock Purdy is a guy that doesn't have one or two A+ all-world traits. But what Brock Purdy does really well is he, like the Kirk Cousins of the world, are extremely elite at running a system. The problem in running a system and having a quarterback who's paid a lot of money is that you have a guy who's undersized, and every undersized quarterback says, Tua has said it multiple times. Bryce Young has said it multiple times. I don't know if Purdy said out loud, but it's just true. You're throwing to a spot and you're hoping the guy is there. Well, Dan, who does he have confidence with? Ricky Pearsall's been the one guy who's with him all camp who's been healthy. Juwan Jennings, who he built confidence with at the end of last year, is injured. He might miss time. Ayuk hasn't been there to build confidence with, and they're paying him a shit ton of money. Obviously, then Robinson is suspended. How much is CMC really playing right now in practice? How much does he trust him as his go-to, kind of blanket? You're going to need him because Deebo, who was your just dump it off blanket guy, my break glass of case of emergency, it's got to be Kittle. And so I expect big things from Kittle early on, and until the rest of this offense kind of catches up to where it has to go. If Kittle can stay healthy, which is a big if, because he's a physical player who does get dinged up, he's got to be the guy in weeks 1 through 4 while everything kind of sorts itself out for this offense.
Yeah. Yep. Nope. I am right there with you.
All right. Are you going to Seattle or Arizona? Where are you
I'm going to go to Arizona.
You're on Phoenix.
I think they're an interesting team, to be honest, because they fortified the lines. Like, they made it clear and I think very open commitment to making this just a tougher ball club all around. And even went and got the veteran guys like Calais Campbell and stuff it seems like they're trying to build the culture, but also just trying to get huge in the trenches. I mean, Walter Nolan, that was a great pick. Calais Campbell you bring in, who's going to give you some solid snaps. Josh Sweat, Dalvin Tomlinson. They're bringing big dudes. And so, Gannon, this is the year where we're going to have to see the actual consistent leap, because I think that we saw steady production overall from the defense, but he's the defensive guy. They've got to be better than just a steady force. And now that they've, given draft picks to it and, another a full off season under his tutelage, now we need to start seeing the fruits of this real quick. And obviously, and I lead with that because the obvious is Kyler Murray. Like, this team goes wherever he's going to take them. I think we've seen enough to know that Kyler Murray is not going to be the guy that's the leader and the Tom Brady trade or the Peyton Manning. He's not that. But is he talented enough to work when they've got a bunch of dudes and like the defense is keeping games tight? Like, yes, I think if things are going well and the environment is set, Kyler Murray is extremely talented, and I think he can have a lot of success. So it's really going to be, is he working with Gannon? Is he going to live up to, the expectations that are set before him within that system? And if so, then I think this team can be really good. But this team can also fall flat because of Kyler Murray as well. So he's kind of the wild card X factor that I think with this team entirely. I expect them to be better at the little things because of their upgrades at the offensive and defensive line. So, I'm expecting them to be better from a penalty perspective and from a sustaining drives perspective, because there are a lot of times where they make Kyler play hero ball, and that's where you get into a lot of issues. But their back half of the schedule is pretty tough. And that's what kind of, makes you feel like if this team doesn't get off to a strong start, and by strong, I mean even just, banking 5 wins before, the half of the season, if they can go like 5-3, 5-4 even, okay, maybe you're starting to build some confidence ahead of that slog, because the back half of the season, despite the rest of their division having relatively easy schedules, I just don't think it stacks up well for the Cardinals.
Backloaded.
Especially when we're talking about, basically the Niners and then the Bucks, Rams, Texans are no slouch. Like, that's 4 out of 5 weeks at the end of the season. Then you have a trip to the Bengals and a trip to the Rams to end the season. That is not a recipe for success. So they're going to have to get some wins early. Now, they do have an easy start with the Saints and Panthers, so you better go 2-0 there. And, Seahawks, Titans, Colts, take care of your early games, because it's going to be rough overall. And so I'm not bullish on the Cardinals this year, but I do think they're going to take a slight step forward. It's just not going to be enough of a step forward to be anything of real meaning this year. But hopefully it means something for 2026 and beyond.
Yeah, year 3 of Coach Gannon, year 7 of Kyler Murray. Listen to this. Last year,
7 years.
Yes, this is year 7. Last year was the first time. So year 6 for Kyler was the first time he did 17 games. Now, obviously, he started when it was still, I think, 16
games for one of those years. Yeah.
First time in his career. And listen to the stat line, Dan. 68% completion, 3,800 yards, 21 touchdowns, plus only 11 interceptions, and he ran for 500 yards and 5 touchdowns, 572 yards. So Kyler Murray, I had a very productive – this was an 8-9 football team last year. This was an 8-9 football team last year that I think got better. You mentioned Calais Campbell, Josh Sweat. You forget about Budda Baker, Wilson Sr. This defense has players. Of course, the draft well and young on defense as well. The weapons on offense, James Conner had 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns last year. He's a very solid running back. Marvin Harrison Jr., I think people were dogging him. I think overall it still was a very productive year. 62 catches, 885 yards, 8 touchdowns. It was no slouch of a year. I just think we expected him right away to be Mike Evans, and he wasn't that. But give him a year. Let's see how he is this year. Zay Jones, Trey McBride. He's got weapons to work with. The offensive line, Jonah Williams, Johnson Jr., Adams. I trust it a little bit more than I think maybe even the Niners offensive line right now. You said it. I think the key is week 10 through the end of the year, you are, let's be honest, you're not going to be favored in a lot of those games, probably any of those games, depending on if you beat the 49ers in week 3, if you beat Seattle in week 4, and you start the season 6-0, because it's really capable. You have Tennessee, Indy, Carolina, New Orleans. If you can take care of business in division against the Niners and Seattle early, maybe before Seattle gets rolling with Darnold and you're at home, and maybe before everyone's healthy back for the Niners, Ayuk and all that, week 3, and you're on the road, you steal a win. This is a team that could be 6-0. I don't know if it'll be fool's gold, but if they can get to that type of start, I think they can find maybe a way to win 10 games. I think that's the ceiling for this Cardinals team, though. And I'll say this about Kyler Murray. There's nothing wrong at all in life being like the 14th best quarterback on the planet, right?
Yeah.
And he's probably in that every given Sunday, 12, maybe as high as 10, but can have bad days where you're like, that dude's 20, 22, 23, right? So I think he lives somewhere in that 13, 14,
The
15.
talent's undeniable.
There's nothing wrong with that. It is an incredible accomplishment for a guy who also could be a pro baseball player right now. It's an incredible accomplishment. I think, though, now we have 6 years of film on Kyler. I think we all, especially with the new faces entering the league, can say he's not a top 5 guy, right? So can in year 7 with these weapons and find just a little bit more consistency? So in years 7, 8, 9, and 10 of his career, can he prove to be 4,000 yards, 68%, 26 touchdowns, still keep it to 10, 11 interceptions, and still rush for 500 yards and 5 touchdowns? That makes him more of a consistent borderline top 10 guy. If he can find that consistency, then I think this Cardinals team has a real chance over the next couple of years to be that thorn in the side. Maybe not win the division a ton, but be a thorn in the side of a lot of teams and maybe get some upset wild card wins. They're building something in Arizona, and I like it. The concern I would be, again, is ownership. I heard this from Mike Florio today on Part of My Take. It blew my mind. The Cardinals, you got to remember, they may seem like a new team just because it's Arizona. They're always changing their uniforms. They were the Chicago Cardinals back in the 1920s. This is an original franchise. It's over 100 years. In their 100-year history, no coach has lasted 7 seasons. 6 is the max, and only 2 coaches have gotten to 6.
Wow.
So they are especially in their recent history.
Only 1 Super Bowl appearance.
They're in their recent history a very pull the trigger team, and we saw it when they drafted Kyler Murray. They drafted a quarterback 1 year, and they drafted another quarterback right away the next year. They can make impulsive moves. I think if they can get to 8-9 again, 9-8, run it back another year with Gannon and Kyler Murray. Maybe the schedule next year turns around and you get some more favorable matchups. You keep building that young defense. Go find him a true tight end number 1. Maybe get a younger, more explosive running back to pair with Connor. And again, maybe this team in a year from now, we're talking about, if everyone stays healthy for the most part, is a really dangerous wild card team. I don't know if this is the year, even though I think they're a better team, because again, that week 10 to the end of the year sucks ass for the Cardinals.
It's bad.
Now, they may prove us wrong, right? The Jags may stink by then. There might be a devastating injury to one of those teams. I don't want to wish it on anyone. So it could open up, right? And if they stack the wins early, maybe they end up being an 11-win team and get into the wild card at this point. But I think that's a little harder to see that path right now here in August than maybe it will be in December.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, take it to the Northwest.
Seattle, I'm really high on Seattle. This was a 10-7 team last year, Dan, that I again think got better. I like Darnold over Geno Smith. I think it's an upgrade. Now, do I trust either of them in a big game in the playoffs? No, because I've seen it from both, and I have no reason to trust either of them. In the regular season, what Darnold did last year was beyond impressive. It was 35 touchdown passes. I mean, he was setting the world on fire. I get it. It was with Kevin O'Connell and an offense with some really good weapons. This offense has some good weapons. Kenneth Walker, Charbonnet. That's one of the better backfields in the NFL. Jackson Smith and Jigba, and then Cooper Kupp. You have a young second-year tight end, A.J. Barner, who's got a very, very good upside. You took him in the second round, second rounder. Offensive line, vastly improved. Gray Zabel has been a stud in the preseason. You saw what he did in the highlight to what's his name? Chris Jones in their preseason game against the Chiefs. He manhandled him up front. Bradford and Lucas. This is a solid offensive line. Year 2 with Mike McDonald. In year 1, the young defensive coordinator from the Ravens took this team to 10 wins in a tough division. Now, a lot of it is the Niners fell apart. Okay, I'll give you that. But the Cardinals were an 8-win team last year. They weren't dregs of the league, and this Seattle team found their way to 10 wins. On defense, Brian Murphy, Leonard Williams, Devin Witherspoon, they have some guys for Mike McDonald to play with. Obviously, a lot of Seattle's success offensively is going to be dependent on Jackson Smith and Jigba becoming a true number 1. I think he can develop, certainly show the signs of a true number 1 this year, maybe blossom in a year or two. I think Darnold getting the 3-year deal, getting the confidence, and hopefully just having that confidence and taking the lessons he learned from the Vikings and bringing that over will help guide him in Seattle. I don't expect him to be 35 touchdowns, Sam Darnold, but I expect him to be a very, very, very above average, high quality quarterback play. And listen, the schedule, again, it's workable. They have winnable games on the schedule. You play Arizona twice. Can you split with them or sweep them? You play Indy. You play New Orleans. You play Jacksonville. You play Tennessee. You play Carolina. Those are all games I think they should be favored in right now going into the season with their personnel. And listen, yes, it's tough. You have the Niners. You have Pittsburgh at Pittsburgh. You have Tampa. You have Houston. You have Washington. But I don't see Buffalo on there. I don't see Philadelphia on there. I don't see the Chiefs on there. I'm giving Houston as a tough game. Do we have a ton of faith that Houston's going to be an all-world beater? No. So I think, again, it's workable for Seattle. I think this is the division that has 4 really quality teams. I would argue right now the NFC West has a chance to be the best division in football. As far as I don't think any of them are necessarily
13, 14 win teams.
13, 14 win teams. But I think
none of them are 6 wins either.
I don't think any of them are 6-win teams. Truthfully, if they, I think everyone's floor is about 8 wins. I include Seattle in that. Again, I'm putting a lot of faith in Darnold, but I think I have reason to after last year. I know he stunk it up in the high-pressure games, but he's not going to face those high-pressure games till maybe late in the season. And if he stinks it up again, then I'm not going to be shocked. I still think that he has the ability to put them in those high-pressure games. Weapons, young defensive head coach who proved a lot last year, 10 wins as a rookie head coach in that division. I think there's a lot to like for Seattle. The one thing I will say is the Allen Foundation. Obviously, Paul Allen passed away a couple years ago, made his money in Microsoft. His sister is handling the estate. They just sold the Portland Trailblazers, which he owned, to the owner of the Carolina Hurricanes, which is funny because their logos are almost identical. And can you imagine owning Carolina Hurricanes hockey team and Portland Trailblazers basketball team?
Yeah, right.
But I mean, Carolina's been surprisingly good as a hockey team.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Their ownership group, I think if you're Portland, you got to be excited about that. There's rumblings that they're the next team that's going to sell, Seattle. So does that permeate it all? You know what I mean? Does that permeate that the front office is, or the ownership group is maybe not as present or engaged, or what it might be? I don't know, but that is a lingering thing that I think is definitely something to consider. I'm just throwing it out there to consider.
I'm not high on Sam Darnold this year, so that's where our big disagreement's going to be with how Seattle performs. I also agree. Like, I don't have them pegged as a 6-win team, but I don't think they can replicate. I don't think they're going to replicate 10-7 this year. Part of that is DK being gone, Lockett being gone, Geno, obviously. There's tons of turnover on offense there. And I think despite bringing in Cooper Kupp and maybe A.J. Barner's finally going to have that bigger role like he had towards the back half of last season, I think it's an overall downgrade as an offensive unit from a year ago. Charbonnet is really good, and so is Kenneth Walker, but Kenneth Walker really hasn't stayed healthy. So, and Charbonnet played very well in his absence. So not to take away from that, but I just don't see them being the 1-2 punch all season long, because I think the one is going to be out for at least a certain number of games. But the biggest thing for me is Darnold. It's all about external factors to him that give me major pause here. First, he has this resurgence in Minnesota with the perfect situation that you could ask for a quarterback to go to, especially when they're trying to kind of rebuild their career. A hyper quarterback-friendly coach in Kevin O'Connell. You're playing in a dome. You're playing with 2 track stars as your, receivers, including an all-pro tight end, even though he was hurt for a good portion of the year. Really solid run game, and one of the best defensive coordinators to help keep you in games as well. I think it was an absolute perfect situation for Sam Darnold. And to his credit, people can be put in that situation and not perform well or just perform averagely. And he was well above average. I think a lot of things will have to go right in this situation here in Seattle, tougher conditions, and with fewer weapons, I would argue, to throw to, and not a offensive-minded head coach to boot. I think a lot of that stacks up against them. And with all of the newness, yes, do they have a super tough schedule? Not really, but the tough parts of their schedule are in the first half. And how quickly can Darnold and company get acclimated to each other? That's yet to be seen. But those are questions that I have when we start with an entirely new group to begin a season. So I think it's going to be tough for them right out of the gate, seeing some of the best defenses that the league has to offer. I mean, even the Saints are not a very good team, but they have really good, defense in recent years. So those are my big questions. I'm not high on Seattle, but I take your whole point about the West. And I think you're correct that they're going to be one of the better divisions in football just because of what they are top to bottom.
Yeah, there's no team in this division that I think should be picking in the top 5 of the draft next year.
Right, agreed.
And that says something about the quality of the play. Listen, I think, Darnold is a huge question mark. I don't blame you for having that feeling. We'll see. I think the defense is what I'm looking out for. I think Mike Macdonald, year 2 with this personnel, I think it's going to be all of a sudden you'd be like, wow, they're playing fast. It looks like a Ravens defense that he was in charge of. And if they can get something to feel like that in that division against a 49ers team that I don't trust the offensive line right now, and they don't have a ton of weapons. We're going to say I think it's going to be every divisional game between these teams is going to be really hard to pick. It's going to be really hard when we're making our predictions for the record. It's going to be really hard. All right, where are you starting us in the AFC West, my friend?
Actually, I'll let you kick it off because I think you kind of were given Seattle there at the end, so I'll let you start our run.
I'm starting with the 15-2 Kansas City Chiefs, the defending AFC champions. I think a lot of people, it's like it's starting to feel a lot like the Patriots, like predicting the fall. The difference is you got to remember, for our late teen through our 20s, the Patriots didn't win Super Bowls until our late 20s and then our early 30s. It went a decade without winning Super Bowls, but they were in 2 and they lost those 2.
Every other AFC championship.
And they were, and I think it would shock us if this is now the era that the Chiefs are entering. I don't think so at all. I think the Chiefs, again, they absolutely are going to be I think they should be favored in this division. I think they absolutely should be favored to be playing in the AFC title game. This was a 15-2 team last year, Dan. I don't see how they got worse. Now, Mahomes, here's something I think is really interesting. Okay, let me point out some interesting things. Again, they won 15 games, and these are red flags. 26 touchdown passes for Mahomes. His lowest since 2019. That year, he only played 14 games. He was sacked 36 times in 2024, by far the most in his career, I think by like 12 sacks. The offensive line kind of fell apart. They have reworked that. You have Jawan Taylor, you have Trey Smith, and Creed Humphrey. The right side of that offensive line should be really, really solid. Creed Humphrey's maybe the best center in football. Trey Smith is a top 3 or 4 guard in football. The left side, Mike Caliendo, year 3 out of Western Michigan. Big dude, but he's a little bit of a question mark. And then they draft Josh Simmons, the first rounder from Ohio State. He's got all the measurables to be your left tackle, right? 6'5", 310, big dude. So I think the offensive line by October should gel, and that left side should survive. They can lean on the right side. And listen, there's no one better in the league than Andy Reid at making sure he's hiding his weaknesses. What I would like to see from the Chiefs this year He also had 3,928 passing yards. That was the lowest in his career, even lower than in 2019 when he only played 14 games. So he didn't hit 4,000 yards passing. I'd like to see the Chiefs get back to being the explosive Chiefs that jump out on people. And it's just like, where did this come from? A whirlwind of offense. And I think they have early on in this season the pieces to do that. Rashee Rice is going to play at least the first 4 games. Then the suspension could be handed down. Then we'll get the ruling of what the suspension will be. We don't know. They could say it's for next year. They could say it starts right now and it's the whole rest of the year. They could say it's 2 games, 4 games. We don't know. But for the first 4 games, you have Rashee Rice. You do have Xavier Worthy and Hollywood Brown. Juju Smith-Schuster is there as well as a veteran. And then you say to yourself, Pacheco and Hunt, 2 quality backs. But I don't think anyone is expecting either of them to go for 1,000 yards. They're going to share the workload. It's very much irreplaceable. 1 in, 1 out. Doesn't really matter. Fill that void. Travis Kelce had 97 catches, 823 yards, only 3 touchdowns. Well, that's because Noah Gray has really come on. He had 5 touchdown grabs to them, 40 catches, 437 yards.
Still crazy that Kelce caught 97 passes.
Together,
5-yard passes.
Together, your tight end production, 137 catches, 1,250 yards, and 8 touchdowns. So the tight end is still extremely valuable in this offense. I think you'll see Noah Gray take another leap up, maybe get closer to 50, 500, 5 touchdowns. I think you'll see Kelce drop that number of receptions down to maybe in the 80s, in the 70s. You'll see that number of reception yards maybe float lower to like 650 to 750. But I think you'll see him get involved in the red zone because I think he's got some touchdown milestones coming up. I think you'll see him maybe production as far as more of the red zone goes. I'd like to see the Chiefs go back to being explosive. And I think that means Andy Reid trusting Andy and trusting a little less of Matt Nagy. The Chiefs have felt they got little Matt Nagy'd last year in the offensive. I mentioned it throughout the season where it's just nothing but quick, weird things happening near the line of scrimmage. Yeah. Go man on man, beat a guy off the table, and let the best quarterback in football use the talent that God gave him. And Mahomes, again, this is year, 9 for Mahomes? So, like, he's seen it all now. So we're getting into that era for him. Defensively, obviously, Spagnuolo, one of the top 3 defensive coordinators in the league. He's fantastic. Karlaftis, Chris Jones, Tranquil, Bolton, Chenal, McGuffey.
Their defense is
very, very solid. Very, very solid. The schedule, listen, they have tough games. Philly. Yeah. They get Philly and Baltimore at home. They get Detroit at home. They get the Commanders at home. They get the Houston Texans at home. They only have to go to Buffalo, and we know they can play at Buffalo. So, listen, you're going to get that home field advantage that the Chiefs have really well. I would not be surprised if they win at Buffalo, lose at home against Philly, win at home against Baltimore, win at home against, maybe Detroit, lose at home against the Commanders, win at home against Houston. If they can find a way to work through that, then you have to do what you do as the Chiefs, what you've done in Patrick Mahomes' whole career. Take care of your division. He's one of the most elite quarterbacks against his division. The division's getting better. We're going to talk about it coming up. I still think very highly of the Chiefs. I think people predicting the Broncos and the Chargers to beat the Chiefs, I'll let them stick their neck out. I ain't picking the Chiefs to lose this division until I see them lose this division, until I see someone knock them off the throne. It's a 15-2 team that I think in a lot of ways is just as good, if not better, of a football team. I don't know if they're going to win 15 games, but would it shock you if they did?
Probably wouldn't shock me if they won 15. My guess, and we'll see what happens when we come to the full predictions, is that I'll probably have them at around 12 or 13 wins this year. And I think that's probably still going to be good enough to win this division. This division is really good. I mean, if we're talking about, the other divisions where there might not be a full the Raiders we'll talk about. I don't even know if their floor is super low given the Pete Carroll effect and everything else, but it's a good division. I would like to go to Mile High City.
Let's go
over there in Denver I want to talk Broncos. Another really interesting team this year. And as much as I'm not a personal fan of Sean Payton and his style of coaching, got to respect what he was able to do in such a short turnaround, given the constraints that Denver had on them with the Russell Wilson contract and a lot of other just poor roster construction. To have such a quick turnaround, you got to give him props. And what he's been able to do in molding and working with Bo Nix, credit to both of them. Bo Nix had a season that not many predicted last year, 29 touchdowns. As a rookie, adding 4 on the ground, 400 yards rushing at that. I mean, he had a very, very nice rookie season, 66%, pass completion. And that's not even really factoring in how he performed in the back half of the season, as opposed to, those early struggles. So I think it's very reasonable to expect at the very least a slight upgrade for Bo Nix coming into this year. Oh, and on top of it all, they've added to this team in some meaningful ways. I think adding J.K. Dobbins is really solid, gives you depth. And, he's a guy that obviously has a tremendous amount of talent, just has not been able to stay on the field, unfortunately. But if he's remotely healthy, then that's a big win. Evan Ingram, I think, was a huge acquisition for them. That really opens up their possibilities in the passing game this year. And then getting Drake Greenlaw, like they really added quality pieces, and it was really quality over quantity for them this year. They went 10-7 despite some of those bumps in the road, despite having a rookie quarterback, despite having, a less than talented team overall roster-wise. Now they've added some talent. They have another year, full offseason here for a non-rookie quarterback now. I think, 10 wins almost appears to be the floor for this team, given what they're going into this year and given their schedule. Here's the big thing that stood out to me about their schedule. It's something that I look for when I'm looking at Miami or some of those other rookie quarterback schedules, types of things. I always look at what are their road games like and where are they? Almost all of the Broncos' road games are either on the West Coast, so not far travel and not intense weather whatsoever. It's pretty much all California, or they're in domes. So they get the benefit of not having to deal with hostile weather, and they get all of their, skill sets at max capacity on these road games. Oh, and then on top of it, they play at home in one of the most hostile stadiums that you could imagine. So I think that is kind of an X factor as well in this season. They have kind of a soft landing when it comes to these road matchups for a still young quarterback, and have, that benefit of being a team that hosts games in a very difficult environment. So that was just kind of the icing on the cake for me. But those are my general thoughts on the Broncos. High on them this year, and really interested to see how this offense evolves even more in year 2 under Bo Nix.
Yeah, Dan, you nailed everything there. I would add R.J. Harvey, the rookie second rounder out of UCF, the running back. Cortland Sutton is a true number 1. And then
Marvin Mims, another guy that you're probably going to see another step forward.
Mims and Vele, both really solid. And then you add Pat Bryant, the rookie third rounder from Illinois, who's a stud, who looks like he could be working his way into becoming the true wide receiver number 2, opposite of Cortland Sutton, maybe by the end of the year. So there's a ton of weapons when you add Evan Ingram. There's a solid offensive line, Bowles and McGlinchey, 2 really good tackles. The defense, Greenlaw and Hufanga, they just take the Niners guys, say, come on over. Exactly. Pat Surtain is still there. Bonito had 13.5 sacks last year. He's a guy that is a name you don't recognize, but a really elite defensive player as far as getting the quarterback. Yeah, they have tough games. You play Kansas City twice. They do have to play Cincy. They do have to play Philly, Houston, Washington, Green Bay, the Jaguars late in the year.
Yeah, but some of those key games are at home. So
you play the Chargers. You play the Chargers twice. They're one of the hardest teams for me to try to, as far as wrap my head around, as far as what their floor. I agree with you. The floor should be 8-9 wins, because on paper, with Sean Payton and what Bo Nix did in year 1, it's just on paper, it would be shocking to me if they're not winning a lot of games. I do think there's something, though, to Bo Nix is interesting. I do think there's a sophomore slump is going to hit someone, right? I would argue that Caleb had just a solid rookie year. There's no slumping from his rookie year, right? Like I would argue that Penix Jr.
good enough of a
year, like Penix Jr. and May, same thing. Like I don't like predicting a sophomore slump for them. It's just weird because it's like, well, they didn't really have like a. You predict a sophomore slump for guys with a good year. So you have Jaden and you have Bo Nix. I wonder, Dan, he rushed the ball 92 times for those 430 yards. That is a lot of rushes for only 430 yards, which means Bo Nix is taking hits. He's putting the ball in his hands a lot. And what's different about Bo Nix versus Sean Payton versus Drew Brees, right, is, well, Drew Brees protected himself entirely. And Drew Brees knifed and dinked and dunked you to death. So I'm wondering what the catch-up will be. What will the league having, the division, Andy Reid, Harbaugh, they have a year of footage now with Nix and Sean Payton. Obviously, Sean Payton and Nix are going to get in the lab. They're going to try to improve, right? New schemes. But a lot of it is you are who you are. And so I wonder if teams are going to just be more prepared now for what the Nix Payton thing looks like and how to defend against the Nix Payton thing. Now, good luck, because again, a ton of weapons and a really good defense to boot. So I'm holding my breath. I kind of just want to put them again at 10-7, and I don't know where the chips will fall.
Yeah.
But
maybe they are 10-7 again, but they feel
better,
right?
And that probably will be because Nix won't have Nix had such a bad start. The 12 interceptions, I think 6 of them were the first 3 weeks. Like, so it's like,
right. Yeah.
So as long as he doesn't have a start like that, you're going to just feel better about them anyway. So Denver's a fascinating team. They're going to be a one to watch for sure.
No question. All right, let's go to Vegas.
Oh, okay.
We'll end on a more fun note with the Chargers, because and that's not even to say I think Vegas could be really surprising to a lot of people this year, but not in the way that they're in the playoffs or blowing the doors off of anybody. But I just think that with such low expectations, they might have quite a surprising output. Like maybe they're last year's Broncos, Maybe they're a team where you're not really, no one's really thinking about them or feeling too great about it. But, you insert Pete Carroll, you insert a competent quarterback in Geno Smith. You give a lightning strike in the backfield in Ashton Genty, who, most expect at least to be very much like what Bijan was just a couple of years ago coming out of college, a surefire producer at the running back position. I mean, sometimes all it takes is a couple little tweaks like that, and they're not even, the Carroll thing isn't little; it's significant. I mean, he's a culture builder. But a few things like that can really do a lot to turning things around. Their biggest problem is the problem that we talk about with a lot of just the teams that have performed towards the bottom of the league for several years. There's just not talent on the roster. It's very thin. You've obviously got guys like Max Crosby on this team. You've got Brock Bowers. Jacoby Myers, I just saw requested a trade today, so we'll see how that works. Because
I think they already basically said no. Like, he's just not happy.
Yeah, and then minutes later, the Amari Cooper news breaks that they went and got him. Not expecting much out of the Amari Cooper return, but they've got talent on this team in terms of offensive weapons. It's just not really too much on defense, not much on the offensive line, although they have, started to rebuild that over the last couple of years. I just think overall, Mark, vibes are kind of feeling under the radar. And this is a team that I think can just surprise people to get to 7 wins, 8 wins this year, be kind of a spoiler for some teams late in the season. They won 4 games last year. So I just don't see them bottoming out once again, given the talent, given the fact that they didn't lose anybody. in my view, of significant note. And they just kind of added some veterans, some solid players. They got Alex Kappa.
He's injured, but he's
Oh yeah, he is. That's right. So there you go. But I just think overall, it's a team that's going to surprise some people, and maybe on the verge of turning the page.
When you look at their schedule, I mean, they have the Colts, the Titans, the Jags, the Browns, the Giants, the Cowboys, the Patriots, the Bears. Like, you look at it and you say, there's no reason why they can't win some of those games, if not the majority of those games. Now, I also could argue with their offensive line, with Kappa especially being injured, it's not great. I also could argue that besides Crosby and Devin White on defense, it's a lot of who, what, where, when, how, why.
And Devin White even has had his struggles.
And I could argue that, you know, even with Amari Cooper, now you add him with Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, the receiving core is not ideal. And Geno is been quality, and it's been good, but again, it's not been Baker Mayfield. You know what I mean? Like, I would even argue that it's not been Baker. It's not been 40 touchdowns. And there's a Mostert and Genti. Like, they have pieces, they have weapons, but you have a new head coach, new quarterback, new running back. And this is really the first year now that Brady is also putting his fingerprints on the team. So again, there's a lot of things going for him. My note with them was there's not a lot of blue chips. Like, where are the blue chip guys? Yeah. Genti, Bowers, Kappa when healthy, and then like Crosby. Okay, so there's something, but when I can list off 5 more guys, if I'm talking about the Broncos, the Chiefs, and the Chargers, they are a victim of their division, and I've said it for years since Mahomes and Andy Reid kind of took this division over. The best thing the Raiders can do is be really competent and hope you catch lightning in a bottle. For the next 2 to 3 years with Pete Carroll, I think they'll be competent, and maybe they can catch lightning in a bottle. I don't think it's this year. Maybe with another draft, another free agency, it's next year, and then we'll see if they move on from Carroll and Geno and where they go from there.
Yeah, yep, totally agree.
All right, the San Diego Superchargers. Put them back in San Diego.
They deserve to be back.
Year 2 for Herbert and Harbaugh, the H Bros. 6th year for Justin Herbert. Year 6 for Justin Herbert. Listen, this stat is so interesting. 23 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions for Herbert. But Dan, listen to this. 504 passing attempts. Okay. In 2022, the last full season, because 2023 he was injured, let's not count it. So 504 in 2024, first year with Harbaugh. In 2022, 699 passing attempts.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's
in 2021, 672. And as a rookie in 2020, 595. So he threw less passes by almost 91 with Harbaugh. That is an immediate culture changer, and it's why they were 11-6. It's why they made it to the playoffs, and it's why it's shocking that when they got to the playoffs, they made him throw a bunch of times and he threw a bunch of interceptions and all unfolded. They lost themselves. So that's on Harbaugh. You've got to change that. But Dan, listen, you add a Marion Hampton, you add Najee Harris. I think Najee Harris will get healthy at some point in time, and he will be an X factor. I drafted him in like the 14th or 15th round of my work fantasy draft the other day as a total flyer. I'm like,
I think Marion Hampton's going to be the starter out of the gate. Yeah. It's not going to happen that way. He'll be a change of pace guy, and then he'll probably take over at some point in the season.
And then Ladd McConkey, Will Dissly is tight end number 1, Quentin Johnson and Keenan Allen. There's guys. It's not ideal, but there's guys. And in a division where the wide receivers are just not great overall, except for Cortland Sutton, he's by far the best wide receiver in the whole division.
He's not, for a whole division, that's pretty weak.
And he'd probably struggle to make your top 10, right? Like he'd be like, yeah, you could put Cortland at 10 over, so-and-so. Yeah. I don't worry too much about that. I will say, Dan, all eyes is on the offensive line. Rashawn Slater, obviously gone. You move Alt to left tackle. I think he'll be a very good left tackle because he's a very good football player and a very good right tackle. Trey Pipkins III is who is at right tackle. Godspeed to Trey Pipkins III. You know that teams with now one thing this division has is pass rushers and defensive line. So good luck to Mr. Pipkins III. The defense, Dan, no Bosa this year. That's going to be weird. He's in Buffalo, but you still have Derwin James. You have Khalil Mack, Tart, he needs to step up. Agbanig. You know what I mean?
Larry Ogunjobi, is that
Ogunjobi? No, I mean, maybe, I don't know. But he needs to step up. You knew it was going to fall apart at some point in time.
No, he plays for the Bills anyway. I don't know.
And Dan, it's all I know is they drafted him high and he needs to step up.
Olujawari, maybe.
Ogbonnia. Ogbonnia?
Ogbonnia. Yeah.
Ogbonnia. So Dan, for me, when you talk about the schedule, listen, Kansas City twice, you play Washington at home, you play Houston at home, you play Philly at home, you play Minnesota and Pittsburgh at home. There's a lot to like, but the end of the schedule is tough because the end of the schedule is Philly, Kansas City, Dallas, Houston, Denver. So, listen, I like the Chargers a ton. The Rashawn Slater injury just kills me. If Rashawn Slater is healthy, then I think this Chargers team is a real contender for the Chiefs. Will have that to worry about them nipping at their heels. I would put Denver down a notch a bit, but without the confidence of Rashawn Slater and the confidence of what this run game can be, I have a hard time. It's going to be a lot of, we got to wait and see. If the offensive line holds up and they're able to just pound the rock, then this Chargers team will win 11 games again. And I think they'll have more confidence going into the playoffs this year than they did last year.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. The big fear for the Chargers is it's kind of very similar with the Steelers situation. You're never going to fully bottom out with Jim Harbaugh as your head coach, but their ceiling, because of the way they play football, their ceiling is going to be limited. They're not going to be blowing the doors off of people very often. It's going to be a lot of controlling the ball, controlling the clock, dictating the game. And then you have the benefit of having a very talented quarterback. So that is going to give you an opportunity to, cash in on some big plays every now and then and potentially go toe-to-toe in a shootout. But that's not really how they want to play. That's not the structure of their team. So that is the question. Like, you have to win all of the close games if you're going to play that way. And I think they can and will, because that's John Harbaugh's a fantastic head coach, or Jim Harbaugh, fantastic head coach, who gets that out of his players. And Justin Herbert's talented enough to overcome some situations that they're going to run into in a normal, NFL season. But that's the thing. Their ceiling is probably never going to be 15 wins in my view as the Chargers, but their floor is never going to be probably below 9 wins moving forward, barring any significant injury to Herbert or, someone else. So that's kind of, where I stand on that.
Really quickly to end this, wrap it up. How many guys come off the board before you take Herbert as your starting quarterback? So for me, I think we know the core four: Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, Burrow. We're taking them before Herbert, right?
Yep. I'm taking Hurts over Herbert probably.
Yeah, I think at
it's
this
close,
point,
and it depends, but I probably am. Hurts has the leadership quality, and he's so lethal with his legs. It's close though, but he's won a Super Bowl,
and he's been great in 2 Super Bowls. He's been great in 2 Super Bowls, minus the one fumble.
He plays big in the big moments. Herbert hasn't yet.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would take Hurts too. I think so.
He's right in that area.
He's probably the next pick. Right now, I would take him over Lawrence, over Stroud, over Murray, probably over Stafford, just because Stafford, maybe in 1 year, if everyone's healthy, I would take Stafford. But as far as anything goes, I think he's right ahead of Stafford.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so kind of in that
right there, in the top 10.
Probably 6-ish, 6-ish, 7-ish. Okay. All right. We see eye to eye there.
Absolutely. Which is why they're going to be in games and they're going to win a good amount of games. But yeah,
They
it's
need
not
to
an easy schedule.
They need to have him have a couple moments this year where they lean on him and they say, "Hey, Justin,
Fourth quarter
we
comeback.
can't just lean on you for the first time in the playoffs because that was a disaster." Like, let's see what this is like if we ask you to open it up and you get Keenan Allen back. Quentin Johnson showed improvement last year. Obviously, you have Ladd McConkey. Disley's a solid tight end, and so let's see it. Let's see it. Let's see it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Good stuff. We got one more of these to do. It'll be dropping later this week.
The big one.
We head to the AFC and NFC North. Chicago Bears, Pittsburgh Steelers. So excited. And then, of course, we'll have our full playoff prediction episode coming your way next week. But yeah, stay tuned for the AFC, NFC North. This has been the Football Lounge with Mark and Dan. We'll see you next time.